Good morning. It's not really too good when I think of what I'm going to talk about. There's been all these news about studies that have shown in the last 10, 20 years quite an increase in suicide rates. Tendency to peak a little more in the upper Midwest and more in men, more in middle-aged men. And there seem to be some special patterns to this, which are pretty disturbing. As a physician, I've come across the issue of suicide in regular private practice, in emergency departments, and surprisingly, as a instructor, professor at UCLA, I'll start with the ones at UCLA. I've got a pretty good relationship with my students, and when the class starts, I tell them, you're under a lot of pressure. It's your last year. You feel you got to succeed at everything. If you start developing any trouble with studying, and especially if you find you're all of a sudden just not functioning well, if you find that you're reading over this stuff and it really doesn't go in, and you kind of do it again and again and again, it doesn't, come talk to me. Maybe we could work something out so that things will function better. And I've had, over the years, 8 students come to me with that introduction, and we talked for a little while. In 8 out of 8, I said, now, I don't want to be imposing or intruding, but have you thought about suicide? And in 8 out of 8, yes, they had. And I was the person to go to. There's a kind of a process that we kind of formalize. We feel that somebody gets depressed, and then they get less functional, and then they tend to have a focus ahead where they can't see to the right, they can't see to the left, and what they see somewhere in front of them is to end it all. And fortunately, in a lot of the cases, the person will go to somebody who they do trust and open up on it. And if you get them right at that stage, you can stop it. And we're very fortunate in those 8. As a matter of fact, every one of them finished the class well, very well. We got them over to therapy at UCLA. And one thing I want to point to anybody who makes a referral to a specialist, that the transition, this is just something a professional should really be concerned about, that the transfer must not be considered as a transfer from who you are, that you're dumping them. You have to make the transition. You have to arrange to follow through. And those were actually all pretty straight. They had a straight story. They had a pattern. They had a functional person who simply was not able to live up to their expectations or family expectations. And the more they tried, the worse it got. And if you pick them out, these work well. Another ones I saw at the emergency pretty long time ago were young women who would make what we call suicidal gestures, take a mess of medication, which you can get up with just Ipecac, made these little token lacerations, not enough to really cause any bleeding. Somehow or other, they knew just exactly how to hold the hands, which I won't tell you. And so nothing bad happened. And in the regular practice, if you have a good long-term relationship, then you don't get into the suicide thing. You get an attachment, you can work things out, you can make sure that there's involvement with other people in the family. And you look at the whole thing, and for even either a therapist or a lover or a family member, the most important thing is to make contact, show you care, avoid a total dependency thing, but just make it a human thing, even with a bit of humor, and that works. So I'm talking about a functional approach to people who get depressed and who get to that, gee, I'm going to end it, or why should I not end it? Now, what's been happening in the Midwest and these Rust Belt seems very different. It's heavily male. You don't have medication doing it. You have a gun, just like that. And the most disturbing thing on it is people don't report any type of warning. This just comes out of the blue. Nobody has any idea that there's anything special going on. So we only can kind of guess at what's happening. And the synthesis I would make from just a lot of other things are that what we're having is a case of isolation from people, from family, and from self-worth. Tremendous, tremendous, tremendous hit at what a person feels that they are there for, what their meaning is, that they're not just putting in time. And, you know, we have a lot of possibilities. We have the changing of industries. We have the period where you could be a young man in particular, get a job, keep it, and do well. And these are just going, they're disappearing, and the person doesn't have connection to family, doesn't have connection to a local lodge, a church, anything. And they also don't have connection to nature. They don't go out hiking, they don't go out with their dogs. They're separated. And I don't know how you find people like this, but what you do is what we do for everything, namely everybody who's close to us, everybody we love, we express those feelings. We bring them into our lives. We bring them into the lives of others. We make connections. We help them make connections without doing it for them. And we really have to do that as a whole, because somehow or another, a large part of middle-aged men and others are simply going down the rabbit hole, and we have to help. It's up to us. We have to help. See you next time.